If you go to a bookstore and look at the sociology section, you will see endless rows of books about baby boomers, their wealth, their power, their aging process. Next to that, you will see rows of books about millennials, their anxiety, their burnout, their failure to launch. And recently, you'll see books about Gen Z and the mental health crisis of social media. But if you look between those shelves, there is a gap, a silence. There's a generation of people born roughly between 1965 and 1980 who are currently running the world, raising the kids, and caring for the parents, yet nobody seems to talk about their psychology. They are the latchkey kids, the slackers, the inventors of Google, Amazon, and grunge. They are Generation X. And psychologically, they are fascinating. They are a case study in hyper-independence, cynical realism, and a unique form of resilience that borders on emotional avoidance. If you belong to this generation, or if you were raised by them, you need to understand the unique wiring of the Gen X brain, because the generation that was left alone is now carrying the heaviest load of all. To understand the Gen X mind, we have to start with the latchkey experiment. Gen X was the first generation where having two working parents, or divorced parents, became the statistical norm. Divorce rates in the 70s and 80s skyrocketed. This meant that millions of children came home from school at 3 p.m. to an empty house. They let themselves in with a key on a string, made their own snacks, and supervised themselves until 6 p.m. Psychologically, this created a massive imprint of hyper-independence. In attachment theory, we usually talk about anxious or avoidant styles. Gen X leans heavily toward dismissive avoidant. They learned early on, no one is coming to save me. I have to figure this out myself. This is why Gen X employees are often frustrated by millennials who ask for feedback, or Gen Z who ask for mental health days. To a Gen X brain, asking for help feels like weakness. It feels like danger. They were trained to be self-sufficient to a fault. They don't just prefer working alone, they feel unsafe relying on others. The second pillar of Gen X psychology is deep skepticism. Boomers grew up in a time of economic boom and institutional trust. Gen X grew up watching institutions fail. They watched the Challenger explode on live TV in their classrooms. They watched the Watergate scandal. They watched the AIDS crisis be ignored by the government. They watched the promise of lifetime employment vanish as their parents got laid off in the corporate downsizing of the 80s. This created a psychological trait called cynical realism. They are not pessimists, think things will go wrong. They are realists, they know things go wrong, and they have a plan B ready. This is why Gen X is the hardest generation to market to. They have a built-in BS detector. If you try to sell them a utopian vision, they roll their eyes. Their coping mechanism for a chaotic world was irony and sarcasm. It was the defense mechanism of whatever. If I don't care, it can't hurt me. But let's fast forward to right now. Why are Gen Xers so tired? Because they are currently trapped in the sandwich generation dynamic. They are the first generation to be raising children who take longer to launch due to the economy, while simultaneously caring for aging boomer parents who are living longer than any previous generation. Psychologically, this is known as role overload. Gen X is providing the emotional and financial safety net for the generation above them and the generation below them. But, and here is the kicker, who is the safety net for Gen X? No one. Remember the latchkey kid? They are still that kid. They are managing their parents' dementia and their teenagers' anxiety, all while hitting the peak of their own careers and menopause or midlife crises. They are suffering from high-functioning burnout. They are exhausted, but they don't stop because their core identity is, I handle things. We also have to talk about the unique financial anxiety of this group. Gen X is often called the John Brady of generations, the middle child that gets ignored. In terms of wealth, they have significantly less than boomers at the same age, but they don't get the sympathy that millennials get. They entered the workforce during a recession, early 90s, got hit by the dot-com bust, 2000, and then got crushed by the housing crisis, 2008, right during their prime earning years. Psychologically, this reinforces the scarcity mindset. Even Gen Xers who are doing well financially often have a low-level hum of panic. They are waiting for the other shoe to drop. They don't trust the stock market, they don't trust pensions, and they assume Social Security won't be there for them. This leads to a state of chronic hypervigilance. They are constantly scanning the horizon for the next disaster, which is exhausting for the nervous system. So far, this sounds depressing, but it's not, because this trauma history has created a superpower. Gen X is the bridge generation. They are the only generation who had a fully analog childhood and a fully digital adulthood. They know how to use a card catalog and ChatGPT, they know how to talk on the phone and how to text. This gives them high cognitive flexibility. While boomers struggle to adapt to new tech and Gen Z struggles to adapt to offline interpersonal dynamics, Gen X is bilingual. They can translate between the old world and the new world. Their whatever attitude, which looked like apathy in the 90s, has matured into stoicism. When a crisis hits at work, the Gen X leader is usually the calmest person in the room. They aren't panicking because they have been managing themselves since they were 8 years old. They are the masters of figuring it out. So, if you are Gen X, I want to offer you a psychological prescription. 1. Acknowledge the fatigue. You have spent 40 years handling it. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to put down the key. 2. Learn to delegate. Your hyper-independence was a survival strategy for a child, but it is a liability for an adult. You do not have to do everything alone to prove you are worthy of safety. 3. Process the cynicism. Your skepticism saved you, but don't let it turn into bitterness. It is okay to hope. It is okay to trust. And if you are a millennial or Gen Z watching this, go hug a Gen Xer. They won't ask for it. They might even stiffen up and make a sarcastic joke. But deep down, the kid who came home to an empty house is just waiting for someone to say, I see you, and you don't have to carry this alone. I'm curious, where are my Gen Xers at? What was the specific song or movie that defined your generation's angst? Was it The Breakfast Club? Was it Nirvana? Let me know in the comments. And please hit that subscribe button. We are building a community here, and we need your cynical realism to keep us grounded.